Greetings, Reclaimers. I am 343 Guilty Spark, monitor of Podcast Evolved. Protocol dictates that you must listen. Come, we have a wealth of knowledge to share with you, and you don't want to make my blue eye red. Do you, Reclaimers?
Welcome, Spartans, to another Halo Book Club with Podcast Evolved. I am your host, ORAN, and with me today we have Aaron.
Hi, guys.
David.
Hello, everybody.
And Krista.
Hello.
We have a full squad today, and we're talking about Halo Broken Circle, the final book in our Halo Book Club series up to date. Not to say anything poor about this book, but we're very happy that we have reached this huge milestone for us as a podcast, and hope that you, the listeners, have been keeping track of all of the books. You know, I think there's like about 30 novels in the Halo universe now.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
This will mark a close to all of them until 343 releases the next one, which we're all excited for. But before we get started on Broken Circle, be sure to check out our awesome website. If you're a new listener, it has all of our info there, all of our different shows, like our main show, Podcast Evolved, which is kind of a general lore show with news sprinkled in here and there. We have our Mission Debrief show, which talks about all the video games and all of their missions. And our newest show, Builds with Blocks, which talks about all the micro action figures and brick-based construction sets that are set in the Halo universe. We want to shout out to our patrons. A huge thank you to all 27-ish of you out there. I'm not sure the final number just yet. Big help for everything that we're able to do for the show. We've been making it better and better for you guys, and wouldn't be possible without. So thank you guys so much for your continued support. And if you want to take a look at our Patreon page and, you know, possibly become a patron, you can find us at patreon.com/Halo Podcast Evolved. Finally, we'd like to encourage our listeners who want more to listen to support Audible. Audible has the growing collection of Halo novels, all of them, including this novel here, as well as thousands of other non-Halo novels, as well as guidance wellness programs, Audible originals, and more. And so if you go to audibletrial.com/podcast evolved, you can start your free trial and listen to a Halo book today. With that, Aaron, would you care to take us through what's going on with Halo Broken Circle, kind of details and such?
Okay, well, we'll do this, and I will do better than the last one where I forgot. This is called Halo Broken Circle. The author is John Shirley. This is his one and only...
I believe so, yeah.
In Halo, he doesn't have a short story or anything else, which is unusual. This was originally published by Gallery Books and then Simon & Schuster. It's the usual print, audio, and digital. It was released on the 4th of November 2014. Doesn't feel like that long ago it came out, but long enough.
It came with basically the Master Chief Collection.
Wow.
Yeah, I suppose to kind of coincide with Halo 2 and what's going on in Halo 2.
Halo 2 Anniversary and all that kind of stuff.
The first coming of the Master Chief Collection, wow. Back in the good old days when it was on fire. This book is 352 pages long, and it is roughly set between, let's say, 860, 850 BCE and 2552. It is in 2 time periods.
Yeah, it's some date range.
Yes, it goes from the start to the end of the Covenant.
Which is so interesting.
Yeah, it has it all wrapped up quite nice and neat there. I think that's all of our details. It's an interesting book. I feel like I had better memories of this book the first time round, whereas this time I was a little bit more meh.
Well, it was Krista and Oren's first time reading, right?
Yes.
Yes.
What did you guys think of it?
I really liked it, mostly just because it was a very different format from the other Halo books we're used to. It did something very different in that there's not one individual, like, overarching threat or overarching enemy that they're dealing with in this. It's mostly just politics, handing the torch, the writ of union, stuff like that. And it's not like the normal... When we pick up a Halo book, we expect a certain story to kind of be presented to us, and this was very different and a little more organic than going on a mission or something like that.
Yeah, this book to me felt very like Forerunner trilogy-esque, where it's a novel focused around these certain characters, but a large goal of the novel is to present a history to us that isn't just like reciting a history book, but kind of presenting a story within the context of these ancient events that take place. Even with the quote-unquote more modern-day things in the novel, it does kind of help bridge some of the other sides of the conflict that happens with the Great Schism, because you primarily experience those through the eyes of Chief and UNSC and with the hierarchs. But there was so much going on with the whole Great Schism. I mean, it was a whole civil war, and so you only get one point of view, and to have this and other Halo mediums as another point of view just kind of help fleshes out all the events that take place. In addition with, part one that gives you that more historic sort of perception of the creation of the Covenant and the issues and conflicts involved with that. So, yeah, it is very different, like you said, Krista, but yeah, it's still pretty enjoyable. It's a little... not necessarily a tough read, but it is a little difficult to remember everybody's name just because they're not human names.
Yeah, a lot of Sangheili names here.
But that being said, I mean, you still have great characters in there, and they have personalities and that sort of thing, and you root for them, and you have the bad guys and all that. But yeah, it's essentially like 4 short stories that all kind of connect to each other in terms of the way the story is presented to you. So it's quite unique for what we know as a Halo novel, like you said.
Yeah, I don't know. It didn't grab me as much the second time round. I think I just sort of was slightly more into it the first time, but going back over it, it didn't grab me as much. I think my favourite chunk of the book is like the third quarter of it, with all the stuff around the schism and how everything comes falling apart. But I don't know, just something this time didn't grab me as much as before. I'm sure I've said on the show before that I enjoyed this book quite a bit, but something just this time wasn't doing it for me. And I haven't really had that before with a Halo book where I've gone back and gone, yeah.
That's unfortunate. I enjoyed it the second time round. It's funny how much I thought, I forgot so much of it, but I didn't. The book is literally 2 set events spread over time, and then that's literally it. Like Krista says, the format's really weird, but I kind of like that about it as well. It's an interesting way to tell a story.
I do kind of like that they show how the Covenant was basically doomed to fail from the start because it was built on the dodgiest of foundations.
Oh yeah, totally. It was we're not surrendering. It's fine. This is not a surrender, guys. It's cool.
The elites have convinced themselves that they're equals and everything else, but you're like, no, the prophets haven't considered you equal from day one. You might have a place on the council, but...
You have a place on the council, but we do not grant you the rank of master.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it also kind of highlights why, when the Sans Shihum decide to promote the Brutes and demote the Sangheili, why that immediately breaks the writ of union. And the writ of union is basically just the contract between the elites and the Sans Shihum, kind of just combining the two species. It's pretty much what the entire piece is based off of for them, and so once the writ of union was broken in the Sangheili's eyes, it's it was over, and that's what starts the Great Schism.
Well, David, why don't we start with part 1, the formation of the Covenant, and kind of the conflicts that were kind of told here.
It's a real interesting setup where the story starts with the war between the Sensayum and the Sangheili. It's just kind of a real interesting job of you have the Sensayum who you may not have known up to this point of their origins of they're a splinter from their homeworld, a faction who weren't afraid of the Forerunners. They wanted to use the technology. So they activated a dreadnought key ship on their planet, and it lifted off and pulled some of their planet with it. So they have this one big ass dreadnought ship, loads of sentinels, but only a handful of actual Sansoyum people on it. And they're fighting against the Sangheili, who have spread out to multiple colonies. They're a spacefaring race. They also believe in the Forerunners as being gods, but they're a bit more stoic against using the technology and understanding it. The war kind of changed that, and then essentially because they were losing, but both sides weren't doing that well either, where the Sansoyum realized we don't have that many troops on the ground, we just have this one ship that can't be everywhere at once. So they were fighting a battle between the Sangheili using sentinels essentially. The story starts with a conflict on a site where the Sangheili are trying to defend these ancient relic sites. The Sansoyum are going in to dig up these relics to see what they are because they want to use them. So you're introduced to two main characters, which is the Lord Mikan, I'm not going to say his last name, Scabrin. He's a prophet of
Inner Conviction.
Inner Conviction, that's right. He is instantly a likable and interesting character because he's telling his story from the point of view of looking at the Sangheili, being really respectful of them and saying this is total waste, but also being really intrigued by his nemesis on this planet, Usa Zelius, who's a Sangheili field commander, and he is pretty good. He's young, he's resourceful, he seems to be essentially quite clever. In this little assault, it kind of just sets him up as being he uses alternative tactics, he thinks differently, and he surprises the prophets. So it's kind of a cool segue of seeing what the Sangheili were fighting against sentinels and stuff like that, and the tactics that they used. It was pretty cool to see, even with the advanced technology, how you could beat them. It also sets up a lot of stuff about what the Sansoyum are physically that they're quite weak. They use anti-grav chairs and grav belts to move around. Mikan, this guy, he kind of quite likes exercising himself and kind of putting himself forward. So he was on the front lines, kind of trying to survey and trying to understand. It's kind of a cool moment. So essentially, the dreadnought is used to bombard this planet, so the Sangheili have to escape and kind of get out, and which they do. He kind of regretfully thinks, oh, I hope that crazy commander isn't dead because I really respect him. And spoilers, he's not. He just turns out to be one of the other main characters. So that kind of sets up these two guys who spent almost the entirety of the book apart, and then there's two stories being played out. The book begins with the Writ of Union, with the coming together of the Sangheili and the Sansoyum. And the Writ of Union is essentially, okay, we agreed to be peace, we're going to join forces. The prophets are the leaders, spiritual leaders, and the Sangheili have not surrendered. Guys, they didn't surrender, okay? So it's not a surrender.
They've joined allegiance or something. I forget what the right word was.
They have made peace and joined forces and to become the soldiers and the guardians of the Sansoyum and the relics. They came to an agreement over the use of the Forerunner relics and stuff like that, so that was kind of interesting. I also there was a small point touched upon that all these underground Sangheili scientists who were studying the artifacts in the background and weren't telling anybody because they would be executed if they were found. And then during the war, when it got desperate, they came up with oh, we totally know how to use all this shit. Come on, let us help you. So I thought that was kind of cool. Anyway, so the one story is essentially Usa essentially becomes a rebel. He doesn't agree with the Writ of Union, doesn't want to surrender. So he eventually, through various other steps, finds his way to a planet that no one has been charted before. And it's a shield world. It's a unique shield world. It's one of the last ones built. And it has a unique function, which we'll get to way later. Usa brings all his clans and all of his troops to this planet away from the Covenant and sets up his little refuge, is what they call this shield world. It's where they kind of build, and their idea is we'll stay here, we'll build up our forces, and someday we'll take back Sanghelios and we will defeat the Covenant. Spoilers, he doesn't. The other side of the story, it then goes from Mikan, and I kind of enjoyed his side more because I enjoyed learning more about the ancient Covenant and stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
I liked his character, and the inner politics was really fascinating. I liked the kind of bureaucracy behind, they've created another hierarch, another section, and they give it a fancy name, and I love the fact that they take their names and it's supposed to be like, indicative of like their personality and some of their traits and stuff, but it's all bullshit. That's really cool. It's an interesting story of him, his politics, and like what he has to do, and some of the missions he's kind of given. He's kind of a lower ranking. He's like a historian, is essentially what he looks at. So he's looking into like the history of his people and stuff like that, and is really fascinated by Sangheili.
I think he's the most interesting character in this novel.
He is. Yeah, he is.
His descendant isn't as interesting as he is, and
No.
we kind of know most of the other major players. Like, we've got Truth and everyone else, and I think he's the best fleshed out character in this, even more so than Usa.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, Usa isn't as fleshed out, I don't think, and it's kind of, when he goes to the refuge, he kind of becomes less interesting, because then it's just a case of his mate is more interesting than him.
Usa kind of recedes into the background a little bit, and we kind of follow the story of some other Sangheili.
He plays the predictable, I'm the leader, trying to keep these people together kind of thing. Oh no, there's people who don't agree with me. We might go down this. I want to go down his side of the story first.
I think we should go down Usa's story.
It's the easier one to surmise, so we'll skip ahead a bit from all like the details. Suffice to say, this shield world is covered with artifacts. We introduced a character called Enduring Bias, who is the monitor of the installation, and he's great.
Yeah, he's awesome.
You have Solon, who is Usa's mate, and she's pretty much an engineer. She's very clever, very technically minded. She builds a rapport with Enduring Bias and kind of learns about what the shield world does and its functions and stuff like that. Him and his people are kind of slow to integrate. They're still in awe of the planet, but essentially they're like, okay, we've come here to live. We gotta build shit. Let's figure out how to do it. We're introduced to two other characters of note, really. So we have, grab his name so I say it properly, Solus Krolon, who is a kind of slightly older, more mature Sangheili. He does not want to be here. He is just a scumbag. So he is just trying to plot his way out. He's scheming. You're already introduced to the fact that you don't like this character and the way he interacts with other people and stuff like that. He pretty much builds up a rebellion on the shield world, on Refuge. And we also have Tursa, who is a younger Sangheili, but is a supporter of Usa. He's very like idealistic. He's like really respects and like really looks up to Usa.
He's like the up and coming,
the young buck.
the young buck.
He essentially gets embroiled in a little kind of subplot with Krolon, who kind of bullies him into like of saying, if you tell anybody any of the shit I said, I'll tell them it was your idea kind of stuff, which seems really weak, but whatever. And he has a buddy to kind of back him up and say, like, yeah, I'll lie as well. This younger guy is like, oh fuck, what am I going to do? So a few other characters, and he falls in love with another female who's a female warrior. Another interesting area where, like, so far in the past you had female Sangheili warriors trying to break out. I thought that wasn't played up enough. I would have thought it was really cool to see this colony develop some kind of unique culture.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see kind of a female warrior side in the more present day stuff that kind of came about this conflict.
The game and Sims and some of the books have kind of touched on female warriors being brought into Sangheili. They're badass. The few that we have are really great, so I would like to have seen, this would have been a perfect excuse to introduce a whole load of female warriors. But anyway, it doesn't happen. The traitor breaks out Solon. He gets caught in the end. He gets undone, and he pretty much gets in prison. He kills his guard, breaks his way out, takes one of the few ships that they have left, and leaves the shield world. To which Usa is kind of resigned to, oh fuck, the Covenant, they're going to find us now. What are we going to do? Shit, maybe we'll just all go to Sanghelios and die, because we're Sangheili and that's what we do best. We just die. We just love dying so much.
But I love that while this is all going on, Bias keeps floating along in the background going like, we can blow up the planet. We can blow up the planet.
Yeah.
He really wants to blow up the planet.
And we should kind of mention that part of the reason that Krolon kind of starts getting these heretic ideas is that he kind of overhears Bias talking about essentially blowing up the refuge, when he's really referring to not dismemberment. What's the word that they use?
The dismantler.
This dismantler. And so that kind of gives him some false pretenses of what does USA really want to do with this colony, and why are we trying to destroy the refuge, and Bias is always also talking about how he would love to see the Sanshayun, whereas the Sanshayun are the enemies.
Well, and the only reason he wants to see the Sanshayun is that he discovers that the Sanshayun have the engineers, and he's like, oh, I would love to meet the Sanshayun because I need engineers on my planet, and then he's like, oh my god. So he wants to be best friends with the Sanshayun. And of course, like, he's a monitor. He doesn't understand any of the real politics that's going on very well. He just kind of says things because he's a monitor.
He's a real quirky guy, too.
Super quirky.
Yeah, that's the thing he touches on. Like, this shield world was the last one built. It has some unique functions that were never tested. I'd love to test them some days. Ursa's like, this is interesting, but maybe not, because there's like a 49% chance we'll all die. Of where, like, the shield world can disassemble itself and spread out. And kind of hide. I think that's what the point of it was, to hide from the flood and then reassemble at a later date. So essentially that's what happens. Cut to Solus Krolon is away, he meets the Covenant, he brings the Covenant here. But before that happens, there's all the story with McKen and where he goes and what he does. So does anyone else want to take over from him? Because his story is kind of way better. Usa doesn't really have a whole point in terms of, like, he's got a great conversation here at the end where he talks to McKen and says, yeah, screw you guys, you're trying to, the Covenant, try and take the planet. He's like, no, you can't take it, I'll blow it up, I've got all these relics on it, you won't come and take it. And McKenna's like, oh shit, maybe you will blow it up. And then he's just like, yeah, okay, I will. So he tries to take it out, he gives him the chance to leave, and it's cool.
That whole conversation and back and forth was handled really well. And
it was really cool.
Who has the bigger guns and who can bluff better to kind of come to that real high moment.
And it really endears you to McKen because he's got like two great moments, and like, he's privately conversing with Usa to bring some kind of peaceful resolution of like, yeah, you and your mate are probably going to get executed, but I'll try and save the rest of your clans. And he's just like, no man, we can't do that. That's not what we're here to do. We're not here to surrender. You don't understand us yet. Because even Sanshayun even said like, they don't really understand Senghili that well at the moment. So like, they're super new being friends, but there's a cool moment of like just him trying to talk him down and it not working, and him just like, I don't know what to do here, I can't go home without fighting and taking you. And then afterwards, when like the planet disassembles, McKen figures out that it's predetermined, it wasn't an actual explosion to wipe out the planet, that he is in fact probably still alive somewhere, but he doesn't report it. He's like, well played sir, well played, I'll leave you be. And he does, which is really cool. And then that obviously feeds into part 2. I'll leave it there. Chris, do you want to take over McKen's part or Oren?
I can try my best, I suppose. So, McKen is interesting. He's the Prophet of Inner Conviction, which deals with a lot of historic stuff, as well as a lot of belief stuff and Forerunner relics and all that kind of fun stuff. He has a wife named Chrysandra? And kind of the big conflict here at the very beginning is there's a prophet called the Prophet of Excellent Resonance, who is a big bad hierarch guy who has a henchman named Renault. And Renault doesn't like McKen because McKen kind of like said, you suck in front of a lot of people, and Renault doesn't like that. So he's kind of up with this hierarch, kind of buddy-buddy with them.
Yeah, he fucked him over on his big business proposal, which was, we're going to go and kidnap some women. And McKen was like, yeah, no, this is a terrible idea. So he fucked him over ages ago, and now he's back for revenge, where he's got in with the prophet, and he's like, I'm going to fuck you over now, and you're going to have to go with my idiot plan.
Yeah, and so the way they kind of blackmail McKen is him and Chrysandra have a child. They get the pregnants.
Have they got the pregnancy yet? I thought it was just like...
essentially like ovulate.
Yeah, she got the horny, which is very rare, and it's like, well, we could have some kids, and I think she Googles it on like Covenant Google, and they're like, someone in your house Googled pregnancy, so now we're going to like get this over on you, because apparently...
I thought she had a child, though. I thought she was
I very much got the idea that she was preggers.
But then how does he have offspring and lead to this part 2 character if she didn't get pregos?
I think she's pregos later.
Eventually, whether she's pregos now or pregos later, they want the children's because they're getting in the mood, and Sanshayun don't get in the mood very often, and so it's hard to get the pregos.
But they also do it very like strategically so they can monitor bloodlines, because they do need to repopulate their species, because their faction of Sang Shayun, since are they the reformists? They're the ones who kind of left,
Yes.
and there's only a small population of them, whereas the Stoics are the ones that remained on Janjerquam.
Yeah.
And so they have a population issue, so they can't just have people have babies willy-nilly.
The big thing is that the Sanshai-hum have slowly, since the Forerunner Ages, developed a lot of birth defects and stuff like that, which is why they need chairs and they need gravity assistance to get around. And what they don't want is bad genetics getting thrown into the genetic pool. So they come up with a kind of list of who can and cannot reproduce. And McKen and Cassandra are pretty much in the middle of these two lists. They can't not reproduce, but they're essentially not on the good to go list.
I think they're on the good to go list, but only because McKen blackmailed or like bribed some people and did like some secret handshakes.
Yeah, it's definitely a big gray area of where they are.
But that leads him open to blackmail, which is essentially what happens after.
Yeah, and so Renault and the Prophet of Excellence are like, alright, we don't like this guy, let's blackmail him and hopefully get him killed.
And take the credit.
Yeah, and take the credit. So they find out that on their home planet, Janjerquam, there are good females who actually want to come to High Charity and join the Reformists, and there is also some Forerunner artifacts. There is a special... What exactly do they call it? It's the hologram?
Luminary.
The luminary, and they have a hologram. So it's like shows the halos or something like that.
They just call it a vision.
Oh, the vision of transcendence or something?
Is it the purifying vision?
The purifying vision. It's the purifying vision, which is just basically a hologram showing like the Forerunner artifacts, just the halos and the arc and stuff like that. They find out that this is on Janjerquam, and they're like, McKen, you're gonna do it. And he's like, why am I going to do it? I'm the prophet of inner conviction. I have nothing to do with us warring with our ancestors or our home planet. But they get him to go. They bring another Sanshayum with them called Vervum, and then a couple Sangheli, and they're supposed to go down in the planet, grab the luminary, grab the purifying vision, and then head over to one of the settlements on the planet and grab the Whammons.
Yeah, grab some women.
Yeah, they gotta get some whammon up in there. And so they go to the planet, they have an engineer with them, and he's very cute. We like him. He floats near ceiling. And this one Sangheli called Vil they're kind of buddy-buddy, they're hanging out, they're having a good time. So they end up finding the luminary, they end up finding the purifying vision, and then Vervum does a ho-ho-ho moment where he's like, ho-ho-ho, I'm gonna be taking that, and you're gonna die here, McKen. And so basically the Sanshayhum on the planet start attacking the bad guys, and then McKen and Vil and Floats Near Ceiling get away. Pretty much everyone else gets killed, and then they go get the Whammons, and then they leave the planet, and then they lose the luminary, is basically the gist of what happens here. I think it's really interesting seeing the women look at him, and they're like, oh, Jesus Christ, not everyone looks like you, right?
And he's very vague about it and just like, yeah, the kind of...
Yeah, we're not a colony of cripples, no, it's just me.
You'll have fun. High Charity's a fun place full of happiness.
It's really weird where, like, they never talk about this planet ever again, and you would think that in a modern-day Covenant, they would have went back and conquered these people and be like, we need your peoples.
This planet, spoiler, gets wiped out.
Oh, does it?
They talk about how the sun, the scientists theorize the sun is unstable. Apparently, the Sanjayum homeworld was wiped out a few years after this by a supernova.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
So the Sanshayum on High Charity were the last of the species. That's why they never go back.
Yeah, that's why they consider High Charity to be like their home.
Well, and also, because they're so interested in genes and genetic defects and stuff, it would make sense for them to just leave the genetically good Sangheli on the planet, and then every once in a while just come and, like, yeet some of them off the planet to kind of reintroduce good genes into the gene pool. At least that's what I thought. That's why they kind of left them. Because they could have gone back at any time and just killed them all. But also they wanted the Forerunner artifacts on the planet and stuff like that.
Can we take a moment to mention the thorn horses?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on them, the fullest steed.
Yeah.
So Ginger Quam has a weird thing about it where it's like kind of a living planet, a living jungle, and so the Stan Shihum on the planet have been able to make like mounts out of the foliage, and they just kind of ride the foliage around.
Yeah, they had a cool one-liner of like, okay, they're technologically stunted because they're so afraid of using Forerunner technology that they haven't advanced very far. But where they have advanced is like in genetics and engineering. So they like go down there like a crazy rabbit hole to where they're creating like sentient life, and they use crazy ass sentient forest that like what I can only imagine as like a tidal wave of vines and foliage and like ride it around. It's pretty crazy.
And they kill that poor elite with it.
It's like the most gruesome part of the whole book.
Well, there's that, and then there's the gravity scene, which we'll talk about later.
Oh,
actually,
my
yes,
God.
you're right.
I skipped part of that because it was just so horrific. So whoever gets to describe that scene, good luck.
It was a cool mission. I thought the mission itself was cool. I like the idea of it, and all the characters, how they interacted, the kind of like the betrayal and then like the redemption, and like, I don't know, it's pretty cool. I thought it was really well done.
I do like it. I like seeing kind of the dynamic between the reformists and the separatists.
The Stoics.
Oh, there's still...
Wrong sci-fi universe.
Yeah.
I do like the bit at the end where the missile conveniently hits them in the drop bay and they lose the one thing that they really could have needed.
And it's the one
the thing that actually told them where the
halos were.
Yeah, it actually had the locations of the halos.
And McKen is like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to really do some politicking here so I don't get killed immediately because I lost a luminary.
He's at least lucky because he brought the women back and he brought a high-definition photo of a halo.
Yeah, pretty much. That's the only thing that really saves him, because he goes back to the planet and Excellence and Renault are like, where's their spy? And McKen's like, he died? And they're like...
He got torn apart from vines.
Where's the luminary? I lost it. But I have whammons, and I have
these
cool
horny
YouTube
women for
video. You. And so McKen obviously survives this encounter. They're not happy with him, but they're okay, and they're immediately like, alright, we're gonna send you on another mission, because this guy called Krolon has shown up and advised us where some Sangheli rebels are, and we're gonna go murder them.
Yeah, well, what is the name of McKen's new elite buddy? Because this is important. Is it Vil?
Yeah, VIL.
They become like besties after this, and McKen like promotes his family away up the food chain, basically, that they become like sort of high class besties together, which sets up his family line.
Yeah, I love the idea of like the trio of like you have this prophet, his Sangheli, and the Sangheli who can talk to the engineer, and they're all three best friends. Three best friends that anyone could ever have. I feel like they could have had some adventures that would have been interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a total, like, sidetrack from what this book is trying to accomplish, but I would like to see more of McKen, because he's a very interesting character. So McKen ends up by the Shield World, and McKen and Uza are like, hello, do you remember me? And Uza's like, no, and McKen's like, well, we met on the red and blue planet, and he's like, oh, yeah. And so they, of course, have a talk. McKen's obviously trying to help him, because he feels a lot for Uza, and almost feels it. He feels like he's, like, not a rival, but kind of an equal, in that they both kind of think very similarly and have a certain level of intelligence that kind of connects them. So they kind of have their back and forth. Uza's like, well, if you send anyone in here, we're just gonna blow ourselves up with the Forerunner artifacts. McKen's like, there's no way you'd do that. And so he goes in. Uza's like, alright, we're dismantling this. And so planet blows up. McKen's like, I'm just gonna tell them that he's dead. And so McKen goes back to High Charity saying that, hey, we lost the entire planet, but at least the Sangheli rebels are dead. And then it transitions to part 2.
Do we know if McKen had any sort of repercussions from that?
It never elaborates in the book.
It never... Oh yeah, because the moment kind of just ends with him at the bridge of the ship, kind of about to fly away.
So we don't actually see what he says when he goes back, but I'm assuming that he says, oh, the rebels are dead, but we lost the Shield World or something like that. But of course, isn't executed.
I'm just curious
the
if he was,
moment he
like,
gets
killed
there.
or executed, for, like, losing.
No, I don't think so. He's all his
All those
writings that he wrote.
yeah, that Zoe gets once it transitions to part 2. So, does anyone wanna pick up with his great grandson?
I'll take a stab at this and we'll see how it goes.
Alright.
Everyone can jump in if and when I get fuzzy. So, we cut to the future. This is Halo 2 time.
2552.
We've got the first little bit is like the sanitized recap of the formation of the Covenant. It gives us like the pleasant version of where the elites joined up and everyone was best friends from the beginning. They describe it in the early part as this deep taste of shame that all the elites feel every time they think about it. And it's like, nope, I'm going to put that out of my head again. We're definitely not, we didn't surrender.
Didn't surrender, Aaron. We covered
That's
that
a
in
good
part
life lesson. If something makes you feel bad when you're doing it, just don't think about it anymore.
Yes, ignore it and develop a really good case of Stockholm Syndrome. Nope, we want to be here, we're happy. So, you get this recap and they cover like the other races coming into the Covenant, and then there's a little bit of speculation about how it's very strange that every other race was given a chance to join the Covenant except for humanity.
That's what I liked when the characters bring that up.
It's clearly other people in the Covenant are thinking this as well, and they're like, how come these guys can't be in the club when everyone else can? And like, there's already festering suspicions that there's something going on that people don't know about, but it's not enough for anyone to actually act on.
Well, because everyone's afraid all the hierarchs are saying the same thing, so if you go against the hierarchs, they're just gonna probably murder you and say, heresy? You can't say that. You can't question us.
That is very true. From that, then, we cut to future descendant, who is Zoe Riskin. So he's having a secret meetup with his elite buddies, who are, this is like their descendants of this little like get-together that they had in the past, and both these lines have come together, and the elites trust, this is one of the few Sansium that they actually trust. They get along well with Zoe and he gets along with them, and they're having a little chat in like the floating gardens about shit that's been going down between Combat Evolved and where we are at the start of Halo 2. We have a quick brief description of Halo get blown up, everything was bad, then we get new Halo, and now we're parked outside the Halo and we're trying to get the activation index and some shit's going down, but you get the feeling that everyone still thinks everything's on point at the minute. And then we find out that Zoe is actually now top assistant to Truth. So he has to go off and do his day job, and he tells the elites, is like, don't worry, if I hear anything, I'll let you guys know. He goes off, and then when he's there, Truth is like, okay, Tartarus is coming to a meeting, keep the meeting off the books. Also, the Prophet of Exquisite Devotion is coming as well, and he's going to be your new boss. He's going to run High Charity now, and you're going to be his bitch. And then we find out that there's a little bit of animosity between Zoe and Exquisite, and they're not on the best of terms. And then it cuts to... Or do we want to keep going through this, or do we want to cut back to Shield World?
No, we'll do Shield World after. I think we should continue it until they loosely connect, and then we'll jump to the Shield World.
Dead on. We get Exquisite explains to Zoe that the Sangheili's time is over, the Brutes are taking over, they're going to be the new Honor Guards, they're in charge now. Zoe's putting two and two together because they've heard rumours that Truth put in orders for Brute weapons, which I get the feeling they don't typically have. Most of the time when they mention the spikers and stuff, people are like, I've never seen one of these before, oh fuck, I'm dead. So we get this little back and forth. Oh, Zoe also planted a bug in Zoe's seat, or in Truth's seat.
Yes, a little like a communication device.
Yeah.
He spies on the conversation that Truth is having with
Tartarus.
So suddenly he realizes that things are about to take a turn, and he has to go and tell his elite buddies, but doesn't realize that he has been spied upon while he does this. So The elites on the council go down to the Halo control room because Tartarus has the activation index, and they're going for like the activation ceremony, and they're all waiting about going like, where is everyone? And then Tartarus's assistant appears with a load of heavily armed brutes, and the elites are like, uh-oh.
Sight.
This is what Zoe was telling us about.
And this is the Sangheili Council, which are very important members of the Sangheili.
Aren't they? Isn't it the High Council on... These are just the Sangheili members of the High Council that are supposed to be equals with the Sanshayum, except
Yes.
they're all about to get plastered.
Well, they weren't equals in terms the profits were still higher, but like the Sanshayum on the council, you guess would be an equal, as opposed to like just the hierarchs that are slightly different.
It was basically the minor profits and stuff like that of the Sanshayum, where part of them were also Sangheili, just so the Sangheili have a part in what's going on in the politics and stuff.
It's kind of interesting because you have this fight, the elites get slaughtered. They're just no match, like 1-to-1 with brutes.
Well, they're told not to bring weapons as well, correct?
Yeah, and they're totally outnumbered. They have a few rifles and some energy blades. They're totally outnumbered as well.
Yeah, they're not as heavily armed as the brutes were. The brutes came tooled up to get this shit done.
And the gravity hammers are horrendous, regardless of who you are.
They describe that a couple of times.
Just like mush.
Yeah, there's one elite bodyguard that steps in to defend, and he gets smacked with the hammer and just disappears. And that's just the end of him.
Note to self, avoid gravity hammers in the future.
This is the control room you come to in Halo 2, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, this is the same control room that they throw the Arbiter down the hole with the other bodies.
Yes.
No, the Arbiter doesn't get thrown down there. The Arbiter got thrown down the hole in the library.
Yeah, he goes to the library to get the index.
So this is Halo 3 timeline.
No, I think this is Halo 2. This is the end of Halo 2. The way I saw is that this scene takes place not necessarily right before, but basically before Miranda and the Arbiter and Johnson arrive, and Tartarus arrives with the index to then we fight Tartarus. This is like the brute squad like securing it before Tartarus arrives with the index.
That's where I'm getting confused. This is like that sealed doorway that you should open with the scarab and
Yes.
go
yeah.
across. This is where that room is. Okay. So, which of the... Is it Gatork that survives
I think
this?
it's Gatork.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
He survives and makes his way back to High Charity on the down low. They assume the Sanseon make the fatal mistake of assuming the elite is dead. It never works out because they later mentioned that they also assumed that the Arbiter was dead and then he's back from the dead. Elites have a nasty habit of not being dead when you need them to be.
Kind of the same thing with Master Chief as well. Which is also an interesting point, is that the political structure is in shambles because of Regret's murder, and everyone's like, why did Regret get murdered? He could have sent the people to help.
The elites put it together with Zoe that they heard from people in the fleet that Truth called off the reinforcements and just started the aerial bombardment, and that's what you get in Halo 2 when Chief runs along and jumps into the water. The honor guards on the ground didn't get a chance to, although they didn't know that Chief had already murdered the fuck out of him by then, but they didn't get a chance to do anything, and all the reinforcements didn't get onto the ground because they just bombard the area to make sure that he's dead.
Yeah, which is one of the reasons why changing of the guards from the brutes, from the Sangheili to the brutes.
Yeah, Truth uses all of this as like an opportunity to go, well, we lost one of the hierarchs, guys, you can't be doing this.
And we lost to Halo. He also makes a notion of Thel.
They put everything on the Sangheili's heads of like, it's all your fault.
All of our missteps are because of the Sangheili.
Yeah, you guys keep fucking this up, so. And then we bounce back to Exquisite. He has Zoe taken into custody because they spied on him and they found out that the elites got the information that they only told Zoe. It's one of those, I only told you about this thing, and then someone else told me, so you squeal.
The exact same words that I said to you. And I was like, oh, okay, great.
So they take him off and they decide that they're going to find out what information he knows because they think he might know stuff about the Arbiter as well because he's buddy-buddy with the elites.
Yeah, you know this one elite, right? That means you know all elites. It's like, okay.
You're the mastermind behind the whole thing.
Yeah, it's all getting a bit sort of crazy at the minute because everything's coming apart at the seams. At the stage that this is happening, High Charity would be just under attack by the Flood as well, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be starting about now?
They mentioned that's pretty soon.
While this whole moment's going on, it's like the kind of beginnings of the Great Schism and all that kind of stuff.
Because Truth does a legger real quick after this. Like, the Dreadnought leaves, yeah.
Yeah, he runs, but like right about now, Master Chief's running through the city fucking shit up. The Flood have probably just come in on an amber clad, so like all this is happening at the same time, and Exquisite is that useless of a like controller of High Charity that he's busy torturing people when he should be focused on other things.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's talk about the torture.
Let's talk about the torture. So,
Ugh.
they have this thing called a gravity chamber, and it sounds like they've been experimenting with gravity as a weapon, because they talk about how Exquisite says, like, we use gravity as a tool in our belts and our chairs, and we also use it as a weapon in our brute maces. Why don't we use it as a more focused weapon? Because everyone's got artificial gravity. And then you cue where I assume he just like pulls a curtain back and goes, look at your elite friends in here. And then you find out that he can control the gravity in very specific tiny areas. So he has an elite lying back on the ground, and he turns this elite into a tube of toothpaste where he starts to roll him up from the bottom.
Well, he goes like on the hand first, right?
Yeah, he experiments on different parts of his body, but he eventually goes from the feet and works his way up. And that's how he dies, and it's like, oh shit.
And it's described really intensely, like in the hand, like you watch the hand start going flat, and then all of the bone and blood like explodes from it.
Yep, and then they talk about how at the end all of his like internal mush comes out of his face.
Yup.
Yeah.
It like pops his head up.
Yeah.
This scene goes on for like way too long. I'm just like, why make it stop, please?
It really does, and then it goes on for a good while, and then Zoe is basically like, okay, fuck it, you got me, I'll go with these guys. So the brutes are taking him to the chamber for his execution.
That's a really cool moment, though, I have to say, in this kind of character's story of him just like witnessing this horrendous thing and being given like an out, which is that if you do this to the next Sangheili, maybe we'll begin to trust you again. And he's just like, man, I can't do that. That was a cool moment of him just standing with the Sangheili of like, this is wrong, I'm not participating, fuck you.
And he knows he's the next one to go in there if he refuses. Yeah. He's just like, that's gonna be me, that's gonna be my fate. I'm not happy with it, but there's no way I can do this to a Sangheili. I can't hurt anyone like this.
No, it's, to be fair, like, if you could do that, you don't deserve to be saved.
No.
He dies real soon, though, so that's okay.
On his way to the execution chamber, Gatork and, is it Tull?
Karun.
They stage a rescue, so they burst out of a side thing, they kill the brute escort. They take Zoe, although he gets his records before he goes because he's hidden all of his ancestors' files in his chair. He grabs those, turns on the old energy or gravity belt, and they start to make their way through this like corridor full of pipes and energy conduits and everything else. And then as they get close to the door on the other side for the hangar bay, two hunters barge in, and then behind them Exquisite is there in his chair, and he spends far too long doing his evil
monologue.
That's the word I was looking for. And he goes on and on and on, and the elites are like, here, how much energy's running through those power conduits over there? And the elite engineers basically like,
all of it. All the power.
So I think, is this the first time where we have in-universe evidence of someone shooting the things that explode in a level and killing an enemy?
I think so.
More or less.
I'm sure there's other times where somebody shot a thing.
I feel like at some point we need someone to say, like, we really shouldn't keep these fuel cells all over the place if they're going to explode.
I feel like the ferrets might have done that in, like, Last Light or Retribution.
Yeah, like, shoot a plasma coil and go, maybe we shouldn't keep these about. They shoot two of the energy conduits, they explode, they wipe out the hunters. and they fuck up Exquisite. So his chair's destroyed. He's lying on the ground, and
They behead him, right?
Cuts him into 3 pieces. They specified 3. It's like, oh shit.
yeah, Gator takes the energy sword and like chops him up and goes like, "Fuck you."
It's good. That's what we wanted, though.
Yeah, it's a good death.
Yep, and then we're introduced to our current engineer, which is Sluggish Drifter.
I love it.
He helps them escape. He opens the door, and then they go and they get onto the ship and they flee High Charity. Do we want to keep going till they find?
Yeah,
the
let's
shield
keep
work?
doing, because I really like this moment where they kind of talk in the ship, kind of, because they kind of contextualize where we are in the timeline. Because you see, when they're like in orbit, essentially you see the Dreadnought leave High Charity. And Zoe has this really nice moment where he's like, I've never ever pictured the Dreadnought and High Charity as separate entities or separate constructs. They've always been together, and like High Charity just starts shutting down because the Dreadnought like gives it all the power and stuff. And then they're talking like, well, should we go to High Charity? Should we help whatever's going on there? They talk about the Arbiter. Should they go help the Arbiter? The Dreadnought's going to Earth. Like, where do we go? We're at a crossroads.
And also something interesting is that they kind of have figured out that the Halos are just going to kill everyone.
Yeah.
They're like, the Halos don't mean anything, they're just going to kill everyone. There's nothing waiting for us on the other side, and Truth's about to fire this. He's found the Ark, he's left, that's why he left with the Dreadnought, he's going to Earth, and he's gonna fire all the Halos. I mean, we're all gonna die anyway, what do you want to do? Is basically the kind of mentality that they have.
It's a good summary of like where everybody is in the universe, what our options were. I love seeing like events from the games in alternate like angles.
Yes.
Everything that happens in High Charity around Halo 2 is fascinating because like when you read like the other book like Shadow of Intent and you talk about like people evacuating from the flood and how horrendous that was, I'm just like, shit, give me more of that.
Yeah. Just High Charity as a city is just so interesting, and the politics going on there and stuff, so...
And it unravels so fast.
The thing I like about this bit is that they're all sitting going like, we could be dead any minute now. It's like, if Truth succeeds, we won't know that he has until we just like cease to exist. And they're going off. It's a little convenient. We get into slightly small Halo universe because it's convenient that they jump to the one forbidden system that they really needed to go to.
Well, they use McKenn's...
But see, they didn't.
They didn't. I thought that too, Krista, but they didn't. They just randomly happened to be in this forbidden system that happens to be called USA.
They could have done that a little better. I thought he was using McKenn's, like...
No, he uses it later when he hears the name of the system, but...
Yeah.
The elites just picked a forbidden system because they knew the brutes wouldn't follow them there. That's the only reason, and they just happened to end up in this particular
system. Or Usian colony?
No, they actually called the system after him. He's like, it's after this forgotten Sangheli rebel or whatever.
Yeah.
Or they don't even say rebel, and they just say forgotten Sangheli.
I think Zoe says that McKinn classified it as restricted so they know that no one would ever come
back here on purpose. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a sound guy.
Yeah, McKinn was really cool. I wish we had more Sanshai whom around that we liked, that we could learn about.
Well, we've got one, Krista.
Yay! Oh, yeah. Zoe's not as interesting as McKinn, though.
No, he's not, but he's alright.
They share the same blood.
They're here in this system, and they spend a long time in this system.
Like a year! I was surprised, because I looked at one of the tops of the chapters, I'm like, wait, it's 2553? When did that happen?
Yes, this is like after the war now.
Yeah, that's a bit of a ridiculous time jump.
They talk about how they've got an update and been like, yeah, no, the Ark is switched off, Truth is dead, the Covenant's fallen, the Arbiter's now started to rebuild Sanghelios, we could all go home. So why don't you come with us? And he's like, yeah, it's a planet full of people that might want to kill me. He's like, no, we'll stick up for you, honest, we'll vouch for you. So they're here in the system and they've been gathering up debris and checking it, and this is all adding to Zoe's theory from McKinn that this wasn't what it appeared to be, because he's looking at debris and going like, it's unusually radioactive. It's like someone was going out of their way to make it look uninhabitable. And then out of the blue, one of the elites calls them to the bridge because they happen to be in just the right position that they can see the sun gleaming off a section of the station. they can see the shields on it, and they're like, oh, this still exists, this is here, and it's active. And then they like start to creep their way in, and when they get close enough, they see that there's a battle going on the surface of one of these sections, and then a ship gets blasted off, and they pick it up like a little maintenance ship, and then they find this elite in it who has a bit of a like, oh fuck, you guys are elites, but where did yous come from? And they have to bond and build a relationship, and then they go to the shield world. But I think we should go back and maybe do...
Yeah, we should kind of talk about what's been going on at the refuge.
Who wants to take the Usan side?
I'll do that. So there's conveniently 4 of us, and there's 4 stories, so... It's like we planned it. So basically when part 2 happens, and we're here in like November 2552, and it's bouncing between the 2 stories, we are introduced to the current Kaidon of the refuge, which is Baltol.
AKA not USA.
Yeah, pretty much.
Not USA. They talk about how there's like monuments of USA, and there's talk of him. He was such a great leader. History has kind of kept them that way. But our new character is Baltol. Has a pretty good grasp on everything. All the fragments of the refuge are kind of spaced apart, and different Sangheili like commanders have quote unquote control of each ones that kind of report to him. So there's some sort of structure in it. Enduring Bias is basically dormant. He was damaged during
a meteor.
There's a meteor?
Yeah, something hit the section it was in, and it was damaged.
I think he was out doing like a hull inspection and something hits him in the back of the head.
But it happened years and years ago, so he's been pretty much just on a pedestal collecting dust. But the main kind of conflict that Baltol is dealing with is something called the blood sickness, which is kind of like an illness that is running through some Sangheili that gives them like a fever and then develops into like paranoia and kind of like hallucinations and aggression, and then it eventually leads to your blood kind of like crawling outward to your skin.
Yeah, like a reddish rash, or veins are showing kind of
makes
thing.
your skin just very, very red, and your blood just kind of consumes you a little bit, and it slowly just kills you, I guess. And so what came out of that is that one Sangheili,
Kinsa,
he develops the blood sickness, and he starts preaching all this craziness and how, the refuge is deteriorating, we need to go back to Sanghelios, if there even is a Sanghelios, because remember, these guys have been isolated for 3,000 years.
Sanghelios is almost like a heaven to them now.
Yeah, it's like a myth.
It's like, this is where we supposedly came from, this perfect society that we had to abandon to escape the Covenant. So we should rally up and go back to Sanghelios and leave this, and Baltol is not the true Kaidon. I should be your Kaidon, kind of that typical story. And so he creates what's called the Griefist faction. So they eventually kind of just take a segment of the refuge. And so the point of time that we kind of come into the story is when Kingsa starts that sort of rebellion. It kind of squares off that him and his followers kind of take half, if you will, of the refuge hostage, while Baltol is on the other half with kind of his followers, and they're trying to sort out what's the best way to kind of combat him. I may not understand this right, but it seems that like there was some sort of sport involved.
Yeah, they go in really way too much detail of this floating sport.
This soccer floating game. Like I was kind of picturing like something from Ender's Game.
That's pretty much what it is, yeah.
It's interesting because this was developed just because that part of the station just lost gravity. They just couldn't figure out how to turn it back on, and then they're just like, we'll create a sport where we can be violent.
Yeah, I kind of picture it as like a cross between Ender's Game and water polo.
Okay.
It's Quidditch. It's just Quidditch.
Yeah, a gravity brawl, or gravity-less brawl, where they can kind of quote-unquote fight, but they don't like actually kill each other. They do this weird thing where they put like a spotlight on the losing contestant, and then that person gets like picked up and carted away. Everyone like cheers or boos.
Mostly no one dies, but occasionally someone kills the other person because they get a bit too excited, but usually no one dies.
So they kind of set this whole game up, so then Baltol says, hey, Kinsa, instead of us fighting a civil war amongst all of us, how about you take 10 of your guys, I'll take 10 of my guys, and we'll fight to the death ourselves.
He puts a big religious spin on it, though, to kind of draw him out. The gods will be watching.
Like the gods will decide our fate.
Isn't this the plot to Dodgeball?
Yeah.
More or less.
There's a bit of it.
Yeah, I didn't like this part very much. The blood sickness and stuff like that, and I thought it was interesting, the blood sickness, and then they put all the blood sick people in a certain part of the station so other people couldn't get infected. It gave me a lot of Bioshock vibes, which I really liked. But then they got way too in detail with the gravity thing, and I'm like, okay, well, can we move on from the gravity thing?
Then they basically set up this match, and then that's kind of more or less when Zoe and his crew kind of enter the fold. And don't really remember exactly the bits and pieces of everything, but essentially you have the Sangheili try to... that Zoe discovers. What was his name?
The guy he finds floating out in space, he just happens to come along and rescue him.
He meets Vornik, who Vornik is a supporter of Baltol. And so that's where they have their conversation. And he's like, hey, I come in peace. I know I'm a Sang Shayun. You haven't seen one of me before, but these are my other Sangheili friends, and they're from Sanghelios. And Vornik's like,
Impossible.
you're from Sanghelios?
And he's like, let me touch you.
Yeah, so he's having this very, crazy religious moment. They also meet the Heragog, and Vornik contacts his other allies and says, hey, I have these people. They're here to help. They can help us out. Let me talk to Baltol. We'll kind of put everything back together and we'll fix everything. It's kind of just how that kind of goes. Then there is some sort of confrontation, or Kingsa and them go to the actual sport, and they
start fighting, and they're almost about to kill each other.
I do love the initial reaction of this guy to the Hergok, where he's immediate revulsion of what the fuck is that?
Yeah. He's like, this thing can fix anything. And he's like, interesting, that could possibly be useful, I guess. And then Zoe's like, oh yeah, that's a fucking understatement.
They fight. Somehow the Heragog finds Bias?
Yeah.
Is that how?
They go straight to him, yeah.
Yeah, they take him there, he repairs Bias, and then Bias steps in and goes laser eye.
Yeets Kinsa. Just instantly yeets him. It's amazing. It makes me so happy. It's Zoe's perspective, and Zoe's fighting with Kinsa really close combat, and then suddenly he just develops a giant hole through him. Baltol's just like, what the hell just happened?
Bias just lays the smack on everybody. And it's funny because he's like, wait, we can't have fighting here. This is a sacred place. And the way it's described as well, it's like Bias takes the missiles with pinpoint calculated accuracy and eliminates them with no other collateral damage.
Literally, Enduring Bias just gets revived and just fixes everything. Once Enduring Bias is revived, everything, he just kills everyone who needs to be killed.
He's a little bit OP at the end of this. He's too good. He needs nerfed.
No, it's great, because then he cures the blood sickness. He realizes that there was some issue with the refuges' nutrients system, the way the nutrients from their food was being sorted or something. There was some sort of defect.
There was bacteria in it or something like that.
Yeah, that's the word. Yeah, bacteria. So he also fixes that. So then everyone's, great and recovering and all that kind of stuff.
Then he puts the whole thing back together.
Then he puts the whole thing back together. He's been waiting so long to take it apart, and now that he's back, he's been waiting so long to put it back together. So that happens. All the pieces kind of clunk back together, but some of the pieces were destroyed in the first disassembly. So it's not quite a sphere. It's a little bit more of a broken circle.
Oh, they say broken circle.
Broken circle.
They say it looks like a halo. They do say it looks
like the halo as well. I think that's what Zoe says.
Yeah, Zoe says that.
I picture Space Donut.
Space Donut. Space Donuts are good.
And then it kind of ends with Baltol giving this nice speech saying, if you want to leave and go to the Sanghelios, you can. If you want to stay here with the refuge, you can. I'm going to stay here with my people, though it would be great to go back to Sanghelios. I'm a descendant of Yusa, and he set up this
I
refuge.
Didn't buy that at all. There's no reason he couldn't have gone for a holiday. Like, he could have gone for a fucking visit. He's like, I must die here, not on St. Helios. And like, no, mate, you could take 2 weeks off. Like, you could go and visit. I'm sure Bias will mind things until you're back.
I think when he made the speech, I don't think he understands how quickly you can traverse space, though.
But it also gives Zoe a reason to stay at the refuge as well, which kind of felt a little forced, but at the same time, it does kind of make sense why he wouldn't be on St. Helios, being presumably one of the last Sang Shayun. Like, he's not gonna, unless he leaves the refuge, he's not gonna be able to repopulate and find a mate. So he's likely gonna die, and the Sang Shayun are gonna be nearly extinct.
Pretty sure that race is too far gone at this stage.
Yeah, probably in like present time, 2560, and
well, and also he was interested in like the Forerunner artifacts and stuff like that too.
That too.
It gives him a convenient place where he's not hated to stay.
It makes a lot of sense, and so because of that, you need Baltol and some of those Sangheliad clan members to stay there as well with him.
It's also kind of what McKen wanted to do.
Yeah, that's true.
Kind of completing the circle, eh?
Completing the circle, there you go. And that's essentially the story. We do have an epilogue, and it's on Sanghelios, and you have 2 characters from the Yusa colony, Duro and Zerg, and then you have Gatoric and Sens, which are 2 from kind of the old Covenant, and so the 4 of them kind of come together at Sanghelios, kind of marveling at its kind of beauty and heaven-like quality, since none of them have ever seen it before.
They haven't seen an open sky before.
They haven't seen it, without rule and stuff like that. So it kind of ends on this very nice note, but they do mention that there's still rebellion out in the galaxy to kind of allude to post-war conflicts.
Even on the planet itself, they're like, we can't go to the place I want to bring you because it's not safe there.
Right, yeah.
Which makes sense, because it's only Halo 5 where they conquered the planet again.
So really, you could have these characters in Halo 5.
100%.
Just running around Sanghelios at the same time.
In Infinite.
Maybe in Infinite, there you go. That's the book there, guys. We did it, wow.
I like how this sets up the refuge to be an interesting place to go visit in the future in the Halo universe.
Yeah, I was afraid that it was going to be another place that would get kind of destroyed or uninhabited to where, the modern Halo timeline couldn't necessarily use it, but it does set it up as just, hey, yeah, this is here in this corner of the galaxy, just doing its thing. So we could definitely have a relic that comes from there and see the return of some of these characters and see what other impacts and implications that might have.
And it's kind of rare in the Halo universe for them to introduce something this cool and not blow it up, so...
Totally.
Well, this is the first time we've rebuilt a thing we blew up.
Yeah, it's true.
That's nice.
I mean, we kind of rebuilt the Installation 04 when we got Installation 08, but then we immediately blew that up, so...
But then, we blew that up.
But now we have 09, so all's well.
Anders Halo.
Even if that's missing a section of its ring. Any other final thoughts on Broken Circle from anybody?
I like it. I like that it's a different story, and it kind of goes between 2 very different timelines, and you kind of get to see the origin of the Covenant and then the fall of the Covenant in the same novel. I thought it was interestingly implemented, where it's almost, like we keep saying, 4 different stories that just kind of converge at 2 small points in the book. I thought it was interesting. I enjoyed it. It's definitely not like one of my top Halo books, but it was definitely a good read.
Yeah, 100%. I really enjoyed it.
It serves its purpose, and kind of like I said at the top of the show, I really feel that it's a history-like book that has a little bit more character and story to it. It's not necessarily primarily there to tell us the histories of all this, but it does give us that insight in a more engaging and creative way. And yeah, it's good. Recommend it to anyone who hasn't read it but still listen to the show. With that, we'll close out here, everybody. Thanks everyone for joining us. Like I said at the top of the show, you can visit us at halopodcastevolved.com or halopodcast.com to see our awesome website. Check out on our previous episodes if you missed them. They're nice and categorized for everybody, depending upon whatever topic you want to listen to. You can also find links to our Facebook groups, our Discord server, Patreon page, live accounts, and all other types of contact and information about us. If you want to leave us a voicemail, we have a Google phone line, and you could talk about anything, ask us any questions, respond to this episode if you have something that you want to contribute, and we'll talk about it on one of our community episodes. You can give us a call at 205-EVOLVE, which is 205-386-5833. And with that, everybody, I've been your host, Oren, and until next time, evolve!
Evolve!
Evolve!